And who was this guy? Is there anything about it? Tell us that experience.
Well, I think that, you know, in those days, the designer or architects of golf courses were not as important as they are today. I didn't know who A.W. Tillinghast was. I had heard of, you know, Donald Ross and Jones and a few of those that designed golf courses, but Tillinghast, I had no idea who he was. And I didn't join the club because it was a Tillinghast golf course. But I think today there's more emphasis put on design of golf courses and the people that design golf courses. So I think it's more important. And you know, I think we've got a marvelous golf course here. I don't like the 6th hole.
Why don't you like that hole? We've asked this question a lot.
Well, I'll tell you why I don't like it. Because I remember, what was his name? Kay?
Stephen Kay.
That's the architect. I remember when he made his first presentation on the redesign of the course. And he said, we're going to design this so there's going to be a risk-reward situation on a lot of the holes. Well, that's happened on some holes. But number 6, first of all, for most of us, and I would say the great majority of golfers, you hit a tee shot, you lay up with a short iron, short of the bunkers, and then you have a long iron, or in some cases a 3 metal or whatever it might be, to a green that is supposed to take a 9-iron or a pitching wedge. And for the better golfers, for the AA golfers who hit a long ball, those bunkers are not a problem because they fly right over the bunkers. So what's happened is it's penalized the average golfer to the point where it's a very unfair golf hole. And I think it's a poor design, and I've said this to a lot of people. Everybody agrees, but nobody does anything about it. And I think that if they only removed some of those bunkers so that you had at least a place where you could lay up and not necessarily be in a bunker, I think it would be a much better golf hole, and it would be better for the average golfer. I think so many times at our club down in Florida, we have 800 members, and we have 2 golf courses, and we have 120 single-digit handicappers. And we've got some people that are plus handicappers, +2 and +3. And as president and green chairman there, I was always aware of the fact that we could not design a golf course for the low handicap golfers. They had to be fair for the average golfer, because the average handicap of the people down there is probably 15, 18, or 20. And that's what you really need. You need to make it fun for the average golfer.
Right, okay.
And that's why I'm so critical. That 6th hole, I think, is a very unfair golf hole for the average golfer.
Mm-hmm. Good, okay.
So I hope someday somebody will correct what I think is a poorly designed golf hole.
Can you tell me what you feel are the 3 or whatever number the best holes on this golf course as of today? What holes do you feel are classic or great golf holes?
Well, I'll tell you a story before I tell you what that is.
Okay.
I can't tell you what the year was, but it had to be in the 80s, because I think I was either president or just had been president, and we were thinking about doing some redesign work here at the club. And Vic, I don't know whether you remember this or not, but we contacted Ben Crenshaw, who was just starting his golf course design business at that time. And he came in here to Cleveland, and we picked him up at the airport and came out here. And I'll never forget, it was a Sunday afternoon. And of course the course was packed. And here we are riding around the golf course with Ben Crenshaw in a golf cart. So we went through all 18 holes, and we got to old number 12. And I said to Ben, I was in the cart with him, and I said, well, we use this as a practice hole because we built a new number 12. And he looked at me, and he looked at this hole, and he said, you're kidding me. And I said, no. I said, we thought we needed a different type of golf hole for this par 3. And he said, this is the best hole on the golf course. Old number 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True. I remember that story.
Do you remember that story?
Yes, very vividly.
So that was very interesting. I think there's some very good golf holes. I think number 7 is a great golf hole. I remember during the Cleveland Open, the number 7 was the most difficult hole for the pros. It was the highest over par of any hole on the golf course.
That's right. And I remember DiVincenzo lost the tournament, one of the Cleveland Open, where he took a 7 on that hole.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he shot over it, went over it, and then came back and tried to hold that green coming backwards, hit it into the hill, and chipped down, and wound up with a quick 7 and lost the tournament.
Yeah.
But that's 7. Okay. Anything?
Well, I think number 11 is an unappreciated hole. If you go to the back tees on number 11, that is probably one of the toughest golf holes at Lakewood Country Club. It's a very difficult golf hole, and I think it's a good golf hole. Number 13 is a good golf hole. Number 5 is a good golf hole. There are some that are not so good. Number 8 is still a very poor golf hole. It was designed poorly, I think. What we talked about when we did that number 8, we redid the green. First of all, it was totally out of character because it was too big. It was a bigger green than any green on the golf course. And what we really should have done is to push the green far off to the left because we had the land there and make it a par 5, which would have made us a par 72 golf course. Of course, we would have had 2 par 5s in a row with number 9 being a par 5, but that happens, you know. And I think that would have been a marvelous golf hole.
Interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
No one has brought that point up. In all
Oh yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, and we were talking as you know, Vic, about putting a reservoir in there too, on the left-hand side to store water. I don't know whatever happened to that project, probably because it's too costly to do it. But that would have
it's still working.
that would have made it in a par 5 would have made it a beautiful golf hole. Really would have, with that big oak tree in there, and you'd have to play to the right, and then, you know, then a pitch in there would have been a beautiful golf hole. Well, maybe someday somebody will do that. You know.
Did it ever get serious with Ben Crenshaw about him working with the club, or?
No, I you know, he came up with some ideas, and I don't think we were all that enamored by what he came up with. And then he was a little expensive too, so I think we just scrapped it, and we did some work on our own, changed a few things, put in a few bunkers and so forth. On number 2, if you, the second hole, the right-hand bunkers, those are the Vodak bunkers, because I put those in there. So if you're ever in there, you can blame me for it. But no, we never did go with Crenshaw, and I guess the only serious changes that we made was when Stephen Kay came in and did all this recent redesign work. But we have a beautiful golf course, and I must admit that this year I think the golf course is in the best shape I've seen it. It's really excellent. And before they aerated the greens were just magnificent, and they're getting much better now too. So anyway, that's my life at Lakewood Country Club, and my life outside of Lakewood Country Club. And I'm looking forward to, as the leaves turn and it gets a little chilly, we're heading down south probably in a couple of weeks and start the season all over again.
Looking back on when you first joined the club to today, how would you compare the changes, not just in the golf course, but in the membership and just country clubs in general?
Well, I think there's been a big change, and I think there isn't as much camaraderie as there used to be. You know, we used to be able to come out here on a Saturday, for instance, and you could always get a game. You'd put a ball in the rack, or they would make up games, and you got to meet a lot of people. Today, everybody's got their own foursome. If you come out here, chances are you can't get a game because everybody's filled up. And the younger people have other things. You know, when I first joined here, the country club became the center of your social life. Today, it's different. They have too many different options. The young people come out here, they play golf, they go home, they've got children, they've got other places to go. The club is no longer as important as it was at the time that I first joined. So the opportunity to meet people, new people, is not as prevalent as it was then. And I think that's why some of us have made such lasting friendships that have lasted 30, 40 years. And I hope the younger people do that today, because that's what makes life important, our friends. So that's the change that I see. The help here is superb. Some of the people that work here are as good as I've seen. They're so dedicated. They're just wonderful. You said you interviewed Charlie Lott. Well, I remember Charlie and Jerry Boykin. Jerry Boykin was funny because I remember one time my wife Sue and I were going, I think we were going to Bermuda. And all of a sudden she said, you know, I need a new pair of golf shoes. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was either the 4th of July or some holiday. And of course the stores weren't open. So I said, well, go to the club and you can get a pair of shoes. So we came here to Lakewood and walked into the pro shop, and she said, I need a pair of shoes. And Jerry had about 6 pair of women's shoes. And he said, you know, we don't get very much call for women's shoes. So he said, we can order them out of a catalog. And she said, well, I need them now because we're leaving on this trip. And he said, well, why don't you go to Avon Oaks? He said, I think they have a lot of women's shoes over there. So we toddled over to Avon Oaks, and Dominic Antonucci was there as the pro. And he must have had 150 pair of women's shoes of every size, color, and so forth. But Jerry Boykin said there was no call for women's shoes, so he never carried them.
That's right. Yes. Those things happen.
But anyway, Jerry was a great pro and a wonderful guy. A lot of good memories with him and Charlie Lott, Bernie Hairston. A lot of wonderful people have worked here over the years. So that's my life.
Any other reminiscing of the Cleveland Opens that were out here, or anything come to your mind?
Well, yeah, you know, we were all marshals when the Open was here, and it was very interesting. Of course, they tore up the golf course right in the middle of the season. And I think I'll never forget, I was marshaling on the fifth hole, and I was standing back there, and Julius Boris came up there. And you know, from the back tees, it was probably 230